The Pyrenees are home to a unique bird, the bearded vulture. Maybe because of its endangerment, or its mesmerizing way of flying, or perhaps because of its place as the last link in the chain of life and death. But the bearded vulture has become a mythical bird. Throughout the 20th century, the bearded vulture became extinct in most European countries, with barely a few pairs surviving in the Alps and the Pyrenees. Everything pointed to the end of the bearded vulture in the old continent. But in the 1990s, different public and private institutions decided to unite and fight against the imminent extinction of the bearded vulture. Working towards a dream, seeing the bearded vulture fly all over Spain. It might be the greatest challenge that they had ever faced in their careers by working in remote high mountain areas under very harsh weather conditions, in the extreme environment where the bearded vulture has found a habitat. This is the story of those who did not give up. Those who gave their body and soul to protect and save the bearded vulture. The bearded vulture is a bird of prey. Its scientific name, Gybaetus barbatus, actually means bearded eagle vulture. It is among the largest birds in Europe, with a wingspan of almost 3 meters. One of its main characteristics is its diet. Based mainly on bones that the bird swallows whole, since the acids of its powerful digestive system are capable of digesting bones, skins, and hairs, along with any bacteria and viruses inside the decaying flesh of a carcass. The bearded vulture could be found throughout Asia, Africa, and Europe, where it was on the verge of extinction during the 20th century. Unfortunately, the bearded vulture coexists with a wolf. For centuries, mountain men have been chasing down wolves by any means necessary. Guns, traps. But then poison was invented, a non-selective method. When you throw poisoned food in a field, you don't get to choose who eats it. From the skies, the bearded vulture was able to find these poisoned baits much more efficiently than any ground animal. In just 100 years, mankind was able to eliminate the entire population of bearded vultures in Europe, from Greece to Spain, using non-aggressive and discreet products such as poison. The Pyrenees mountain range was fortunate enough that by the end of the 18th century, wolves were already extinct. Without wolves, the pressure of the local population to deal with them disappeared, and poison was no longer used as there was no threat left to eliminate. Thanks to this, a reservoir was formed with the last group of birds, the only ones in Spain, nesting in the highest mountains of the Pyrenees. A few bearded vultures that remained in the Pyrenees chose steep walls with caves where they could nest quietly. Poison, hunting, and power lines reduced the bearded vulture population in the 1980s to just 30 pairs. The situation turned critical in 1994, and the government of Aragon decided to take a step forward with the bearded vulture recovery plan. In order to try and save those 30 pairs of bearded vultures that remained in Spain, the group began an intensive tracking. More direct action was also taken, such as supplementing feeding, with the main goal of ensuring that the youngest and most inexperienced bearded vultures had easy access to some type of food. One of the strategic points where these food contributions are made is in the Odessa and Monte Perdido National Park. Elena Villagrasa, director of the park, together with park rangers Feliciano and Daniel, are heading towards the Esguain Valley in the middle of a blizzard. Winter is the most important time for this, since it is also the season of the highest energy consumption for the bearded vultures. And because the snow can hide their main food source, animal carcasses, it is not an easy task. The cold and the harsh conditions have made it impossible to reach the place where these contributions are traditionally taken to. Being able to see more than 10 bearded vultures come to this feeder is the result of over 30 years of work. The Odessa y Monte Perdido National Park is perhaps the place with the highest number of bearded vultures in Europe. Given its accessibility, security, and control conditions, it is the best place in the world to watch bearded vultures. But this is not a coincidence. Access by car to Esguain Valley is difficult for traditional tourism. It takes more than an hour through narrow roads with hundreds of curves. It's not for everyone. This makes tourism and human activity in the valley very limited, which has favored the settlement of the bearded vulture. The working conditions of the national park staff are difficult. The temperature is 5 degrees Celsius below zero, and everything is covered in snow, which makes it hard to take the food to the place where the bearded vultures are fed. In 1995, a group of young naturalists decided to create the foundation for the conservation of the bearded vulture and joined the government of Aragon to try to stop what seemed inevitable, the extinction of the bearded vulture. The team began to thoroughly research the behavior of the bearded vulture to understand why its population was declining so much. They started from scratch in order to know everything. How many there were, where they were, why they died, and above all, how they were reproducing. To monitor reproduction, how can we know the behavior of a bird in which all its members are the same, with no differences between males and females, and that is also capable of traveling kilometers in a few minutes and to unreachable places, is through marking and radio tracking a few bearded vultures in order to know their behavior. We are joined by a team from the government of Aragon that will try to capture and mark some bearded vultures. They do it in a place where food is provided weekly, so it is a location the birds trust. The team prepares a net that will be fired by a remote-controlled mini-cannon. When everything is finished, the only thing left to do is to hide and wait. Suddenly, we start to hear the characteristic sound of the bearded vultures. They have begun to fly over the area and quickly decide to come down. The bearded vultures approach with mistrust. It's seems they know that something is different today as they move towards the food with great caution. The capture process is delicate. Whoever activates the cannon that will cast the net over the bearded vultures must make sure that it won't harm any of them. As the number of bearded vultures grow, so does their confidence as they advance to the desired location. The first thing to do is to cover them in a towel to make them relax and reduce stress. Little by little, the birds are released from the nets, and one by one, they are moved to a table where they will be carefully examined. Releasing them from the net is not easy, but it must be done with extreme care to avoid hurting the bearded vultures. At the same time, one must keep an eye on their powerful beaks to avoid an unexpected attack. The bearded vulture captured today is a 1-year-old chick. When the first bearded vultures begin to be marked, it was mainly to try and find out the causes of mortality and reduce them. When one or several marked bearded vultures die of a poisoning accident, it is an alarm signal that allows institutions to act quickly, search for the poison, and avoid new deaths. Marking endangered populations allows us to gather a great deal of vital information for their preservation, such as sex, survival rates, life expectancy, or the age of first breeding. Currently, there are about 120 marked specimens, practically 12% of the 1,000 specimens that live in the Pyrenees today. Very few species in the world have such a strict monitoring of their population. One of the most striking features of the bearded vulture is the orange colour of its feathers, which it obtains by bathing in ferruginous mud, since its adult plumage is actually white. It takes about 7 years for the bearded vulture to obtain this white colour on its chest and head, going from black with some white feathers when it is a 1-year-old bird, to brown and lighter tones as it matures. In the Homontana region of Huesca, a trio of bearded vultures has its own territory. This unit, composed of 2 males and a female, have not been able to breed a chick for years. To try to change this trend, Gonzalo Geliz, member of the Foundation for the Conservation of the Bearded Vulture, is responsible for providing food and wool in their nesting area. As always, the first to arrive will be the vultures. Their arrival in large groups will get the attention of the bearded vultures, even though they are flying several kilometers away. When there are only a few bones left, the vultures will begin to leave the place, and the bearded vultures will come to participate in the last part of the feast. After a few reconnaissance flights, the Homontana trio decides to land and have something to eat. Gonzalo observes them from afar. He wants to make sure that all his members are in the best possible condition to, at last, be able to hatch a chick. After a few weeks of monitoring, Damien and George, agents for the protection of nature, have managed to determine the exact place where the Samantana trio has begun to incubate their eggs. The chosen cave has never been used before. It is located in a wall of more than 100 meters high, with no access to any terrestrial predator. We have to stay more than half a kilometer away so as not to interfere in any way with their breeding displays. It is a very sensitive nest. If the parents feel threatened or uncomfortable, they could abandon it. And this would be life-threatening for the egg. Incubation is done by all members of the family in shifts of 4 to 5 hours. Whoever stays in the nest will spend most of the time still on top of the egg, providing the temperature and humidity required for its development. From time to time, they will stand up and turn the egg over, a ritual that must be carried out during the approximately 53 days of incubation. From our distance, it is impossible to know if there are 1 or 2 eggs. In any case, if 2 chicks were born, only one of them would survive, since after a week of birth, the vindictive nature of the species would make the older chick kill the younger one. Protecting the bearded vulture not only means feeding it, watching over it, and protecting its ecosystem, but it is also vital to raise awareness in society. In the medieval village of Ainsa, in the heart of the Pyrenees, the Eco Museum of the Pyrenean wildlife has been built. This area houses birds of prey that cannot be rehabilitated, including a cage with 2 bearded vultures. The male, Huesos, suffered from avian malaria and needed veterinary care for a year and a half, a time in which he became domesticated and is no longer able to live in the wild on his own. The female, Montanessa, broke her wing in a collision against a power line. Although she underwent surgery, she is unable to fly and is therefore not fit to live in the wild. Before bringing them together, a previous acclimatization process was carried out, where the birds were placed in different cages to avoid negative interactions that could lead to aggressive behavior. Once some degree of acceptance was noticed, they were brought together. What surprised us was seeing how both bearded vultures very excitedly began to bring wool to the nest and interact with each other. At the moment, they're in a period of building trust, as it happens in nature, where couples are established slowly. So far, they've not been able to reproduce, but the improvement in the connection of the couple will allow them to become parents in the future. Since the beginning of the recovery plan, the situation of the bearded vulture has improved substantially in the Pyrenees, with an average population growth of around 3% each year. In these 26 years, it has been possible to go from around 30 pairs to almost 90 in the Aragonese Pyrenees, reaching more than 1,000 bearded vultures in the whole Pyrenees. However, this growth has been drastically reduced in recent years. These events have resulted in the concentration of many specimens in a space in which they compete with each other. This has several consequences, one of which is that the first stage of breeding is delayed. While in other populations the first stage of breeding is between 5 or 6 years, in the Pyrenees it is currently around 10 years. This has drastically reduced the number of chicks born. Faced with the decline of the population, both the government of Aragon and the Foundation for the Conservation of the Bearded Vulture are targeting pairs that repeatedly fail to reproduce. There are nests that fail year after year, with cases of 6 or 7 dead chicks in the same nest. This prompted the launch of a program to rescue those eggs in which the chick would never survive. The only way to save them from certain death was to retrieve them from the nest and raise them in captivity. They have located the nest of a bearded vulture pair that systematically has had reproductive failures during the last few years. The parents have never been able to get a chick to hatch. A multidisciplinary team has been assembled, formed by rangers of the High Altitude Intervention Group, members of the Foundation for the Conservation of the Bearded Vulture, and agents for the protection of nature of the government of Aragon. The nest is located in the high mountain, in a new place that has never been accessed before. After 2 hours of climbing, the team begins to prepare the equipment to descend with ropes to the nest. It is a tense moment of concentration. Silence takes over the team. The team would have to descend about 70 meters, and that means carrying more equipment than expected. The climber's jump into the void is not an easy feat. Little by little, they manage to overcome this first obstacle and descend the 60 meters that separate them from the nest. When they make it to the nest, they find it empty. The parents have fled in the face of human presence.
Sí, ya están, hay 2 huevos.
Two eggs have been found. A lucky day. Oscar and Juanj take photographs of the state of the nest and place the 2 eggs in a suitcase prepared with wool to maintain the temperature and keep them safe and padded. Now they must climb back the 60 meters, centimeter by centimeter. After an hour of climbing, the eggs finally reach the top. The eggs look good, but it is still too early to tell if they are fertilized. It is a blessing for an entire team that has made a great effort to retrieve these 2 treasures full of life. Everything is quickly picked up, and the descent begins with great care. The terrain is very steep and slippery, and a fall could ruin all the work. Once down, the eggs are placed in a portable incubator to be able to take them quickly to CRIA, the Human Isolation Breeding Center in Zaragoza, where in just a few hours the 2 eggs rescued in the Pyrenees will be analyzed. results are promising. One of them was fertilized. From now on, it will be called H8. The eggs are monitored 24 hours a day by members of the Foundation for the Conservation of the Bearded Vulture. The egg is this marvelous capsule where in just 53 days, a bearded vulture chick will be hatched. During the artificial incubation, it will receive the same care that it would have received from its parents in the nest. In nature, both parents participate in the incubation process. This means that when one takes over and the other gets up to make room, the egg will be exposed to unavoidable cold air and will go, for a short time, from being almost at 37 degrees to room temperature. In artificial incubation, this moment is replicated by taking the egg to the window, thus cooling the air both in the incubator and in the egg, and then returning it back to the incubator. Through research carried out using telemetric eggs in real bearded vulture nests, the temperature, humidity, and movements that an egg needs during incubation are known. Ovoscopy is used to determine the exact gestation day of an egg collected in the wild. Using a powerful light, it is possible to see inside the egg and find out how many days are left until it hatches. The 5 eggs at CRIA this year are examined almost daily. It is a very exciting time, as their caretakers can see the chicks' first movements, the blood vessels through which they feed, and even make out their already impressive beak. At the same time, a pencil is used to mark the air chamber that, little by little, is being created inside the egg that will allow the chick to breathe before hatching. The news from the Somontano nest could not be better. A chick has hatched. An extraordinary event for this trio of bearded vultures that had years of failures behind them. The adults are very active. They have just brought what looks like a leg of lamb. In these first days of life, the chick, which barely weighs 200 grams, will eat the small pieces of meat that the adults tear off the bones they bring. From our observation point, we can barely see the chick. Only its small head stands out, but its energetic movements are a sign of good health. With the days, it will grow and gain strength. It is an exciting and hopeful moment for its guardians. At CRIA, everything suggests that the hatchling date is also near. H8, the egg collected in the Pyrenees, is moving, and the chick has started to chirp from the inside. That means that it has pierced the internal air chamber and is already breathing from it. Therefore, the time of hatching will be in the next 72 hours. The egg will be watched every minute. From then on, it will not be turned over anymore. It will be left in a fixed position, from which the definitive breaking of the eggshell will begin. The process will be slow. The chick will have to break the shell by itself, which requires a great effort, so it will alternate between periods of struggle to get out and moments of mandatory rest. It's been over 60 hours of hatching. It's 3 o'clock in the morning, and Teresa does not take her eyes off the egg. She knows that after a certain crack, the process will accelerate, and she will have to be there. Every movement requires a great effort. A great but contained moment of tension takes over the small room when, finally, the chick cracks the egg completely. It's a very delicate moment. Once out of the shell, and even though the chicken is exhausted, Teresa must wait for the vein that connects the chicken to the egg to dry out. Once this happens, Teresa will take the chick out of the shell, weigh it, and put it back into the incubator, where it will rest for a few hours, completely unaware of the effort that dozens of people have made to get it here. A captive breeding program aims to recreate the behavioral patterns that bearded vulture chicks would have experienced in the wild. The chick is only 1 day old and will spend about 15 days in this incubator until it is able to regulate its temperature. All chicks are monitored 24 hours a day via cameras. While here, it will be fed 5 or 6 times a day. To prevent human imprinting, the chicks are raised in visual and acoustic isolation. For the first week, when the chicks are able to see, they will be fed with life-size decoys of adult bearded vultures, which will allow the keepers to feed and water them without being seen. The chicks will see these decoys as their parents. In the meantime, they are preparing what will be their nests. In the Samantana nest, the bearded vulture chick is already 50 days old. It has reached a considerable size, and the parents are not so much on top of it. The chick spends its time grooming, eating, and fattening up. Hopes are high this year, as this is the first time in more than a decade that a chick from this breeding pair has reached this size. At this age, the chick feeds itself on morsels brought in by the parents, and its body begins to be able to digest whole bones. The most grey plumage starts to be joined by the first feathers that will allow it to fly one day. The growth of a bearded vulture chick is spectacular. They are born with only 140 grams, and in only 60 days they will multiply their weight 30 times, until they reach 4 kilos. The food has been gradually becoming more consistent, going from mush to mouse pups to bones and lamb meat. But just as important as the food is the stimulation and interaction the chicks receive from their caretakers through the decoy. Years of observation of nests in the wild have allowed us to achieve a highly convincing relationship. It is at the times when the caretaker feeds the chicks that each little vulture shows its personality. Their caretakers point out each bearded vulture is special and interacts differently with the decoy. Some are very independent and prefer to eat alone, while others like to be fed and pampered by their dummy parents. After 2 months, the chicks are already able to regulate their temperature much better. It is time to take them up to the Pyrenees. Before that, veterinarian Juan Manuel Blanco will do a complete checkup. Juan Manuel is one of the world's leading experts in captive bird breeding. They wait for the chick to settle down quietly to proceed with the examination. H8, the egg that was rescued in the Pyrenees, has become a strong and healthy chick. It will be named Reintroduction. His blood will be taken, his muscle tone and plumage will be checked, and he will be injected with vitamins. Together with 2 more chicks, he will be transferred to a new home in the Esquoin Valley. For his caretakers, it is an important moment. In the Somontano nest, everything has been going well. The chick is growing normally, but the naturalists that watch over it are worried because the parents are behaving very strangely. They have stopped entering the nest, and even though they are still flying around and perching a few meters away, they don't seem to be bringing food. It's very hot outside, and perhaps they do not want to bring their body heat near the chick. But it is all very strange. Perhaps it is at the bottom of the nest, trying to avoid the heat. But the behavior is very strange. After hours of observation, it has been decided to begin rescue procedures. The unit specialized in high-altitude rescues has been called to go down to the nest and check what could have happened to the bearded vulture chick. The first 3 chicks have arrived in the Esquoin Valley, and the second phase of their captive breeding, the field breeding, begins. For 2 months, they will live in cages from which they'll be able to see wild bearded vultures interact with each other and with other species. The construction is located inside the Odessa and Monte Perida National Park. The caretakers will be on 3-day shifts during which they will live with and care for the chicks 24 hours a day, that each bearded vulture has to exhibit as time passes, like standing up, exercising their wings, balancing on one leg. All this is written down, and if any bird is not acting the way it should for its age, a veterinary checkup will be done in case there is an underlying problem. This will be one of the most important phases of their development. The chick cages are placed in front of an esplanade where the national park staff provide food for wild birds. From their balconies, the bearded vulture chicks will be constantly watching how wild birds interact with each other and with other species. This way, these bearded vultures that have lived in captivity will be learning through natural imprint how they have to behave, how to obtain food, what problems there may be when interacting with another species, and so, when they are released in Picos de Europa, they can fend for themselves to survive in nature. After 2 months of visual learning about what it's like to be a bearded vulture, and once they've almost reached the size of an adult, the territorial imprinting is about to begin, which means they recognize as their territory the place in which they make their first flight. The lack of free territories in the Pyrenees for the youngest bearded vultures forced us to choose a new destination for the captive bred chicks. The Picos de Europa National Park. Choosing this destination was not a coincidence. For years it was observed which places this species naturally chose when it decided to travel outside the Pyrenees to scout for new territories. It was found that their main destination was the Cantabrian Mountains, in particular the Picos de Europa National Park. The Foundation for the Conservation of the Bearded Vulture was able to verify that the environment of the Cantabrian Mountains was fantastic due to its orography and the abundance of natural food. The naturalists of the High Altitude Intervention Corps of the Government of Aragon have just arrived in the vicinity of the Somontano nest. But since it is a deep cave, it is possible that the little bearded vulture is taking refuge there. Every year, they perform similar rescues. They know that expectations are not good, but they have to try. It would not be the first time that a chick has been saved from death in the last minutes. In any case, even if the rescue was not a success, it will be vital to know the reasons why the chick could not survive. It is a difficult operation, where the urgency to reach the nest and rescue the chick is faced with ensuring the complete safety of the members of the operation.
Una piedra. Sí,
The lush vegetation has slowed down the access to the nest. After an hour of descent, the team manages to get on top of the nest and take a look. The cave where the nest is located is quite large and deep, but unfortunately, it does not look promising.
Nada, no hay nada.
There is no trace of the chick. Death has once again visited the Somontano trio. In recent years, it had never come this far. There were barely 2 months left for the little bearded vulture to fly away. It is a double bad news. Besides the loss of the chick, there is a lack of information about the cause of its death. There is a certain sadness in the team. There was a lot of hope this year. Months of follow-up, months of hopeful anticipation, all gone without any explanation. Such is nature's design. They will have to wait until next year. The 5 bearded vulture chicks are already in Asturias, in the Picos de Europa National Park, where, thanks to this reintroduction program, this small population is almost a miracle, since the bearded vulture had been extinct in these mountains for over 70 years. In the visiting center, the Bearded Vulture Mountains, Javier Gil, member of the Foundation for the Conservation of the Bearded Vulture, studies the situation of all the marked bearded vultures that live in this park. All bearded vultures released in Picos de Europa carry a GPS transmitter. Every day the staff studies their behavior and position. If a bearded vulture is not flying on a normal day, then the staff physically goes to that place to check what's happening. This has saved the lives of several bearded vultures. This radio tracking is vital, especially in the first year of life, since bearded vulture chicks have trouble flying and have worse conditions for survival. When two bearded vultures meet, socialize, interact, and fly together, it allows them to learn from each other and gives them much better chances of survival. We moved into the Picos de Europa National Park to see the cages where this year's 5 chicks are kept. 2 of them, Rosalao and Guarda, have been doing flight exercises inside the cages for a few weeks, and the time has come to release them. Javier opens both doors. It is a very tense moment. We don't know how that first flight will be, how far they will go, or where they will land. David and Javier have left food near the cages to encourage them to leave, and have strategically positioned themselves to be able to control the areas where the chicks could land on their first flight. They have remained here in very large cages for 4 weeks. During this time, they have been able to watch other bearded vultures in the wild and become familiar with the environment, which they will recognize in the future as their birthplace. This will be vital for their settlement in Picos de Europa. Suddenly, the fog rolls in. It is a very common phenomenon in Picos de Europa that can make the tracking of the chicks' movements harder. After several hours of waiting, Resaloa, the more daring of the 2, decides to head outside. He is a very intrepid bearded vulture. He perches on a nearby rock and begins to do flying exercises. Guarda, however, takes it slower. She doesn't seem to be in a hurry to leave. The fog comes and goes. The watchers hope that given her lack of enthusiasm, she won't decide to fly right now. David has seen Guarda leave, but the fog has turned thicker and thicker, which prevented him from knowing where the bird has landed. He goes down to check. It is getting dark. The fog persists and there is no visibility, so we will have to wait until tomorrow to watch them make their first flights. The next morning, we climbed with Javier. The first thing to do is to confirm that both bearded vultures are still in the same area. Indeed, from afar, we can see Guarda in the same place where we left her yesterday doing flight exercises. It seems that he can take flight at any moment. After a few hours of waiting, he goes for the final leap into the void. It's his first flight. The magic of thousands of years of learning painted in his genes makes it soar through the air with incredible perfection. H8, Rosalao, that small egg collected in the Pyrenees, is today a healthy bearded vulture ready for a new life. The Foundation's team will monitor the 5 bearded vulture chicks raised in captivity on a daily basis. For a couple of months, as in the wild, the chicks will be kept close to their nests, the cages, where their adoptive parents will provide them with food. Little by little, they will begin to explore new places in the park, and in 1 more year, the goal will have been achieved. 70 years ago, the bearded vulture was extinct in these mountains. Today, more than 30 bearded vultures can be seen flying and breeding in the Picos de Europa National Park. Flying freely with the Cantabrian Sea in the horizon. All this thanks to the work and dedication of those who one day decided not to give up and dreamed of saving the bearded vulture.